Aristotle had no, around well before the Bible was written, right? So, people read all kinds of things. And in fact, a lot of the neo-Lamarckians, so a number of evolutionists after Darwin adopted a neo-Lamarckian view called orthogenesis, which was a teleological view of evolution that I kind of showed up there. Things evolved towards some final state. So a number of paleontologists held this view, for example, and theorized that the reason dinosaurs went extinct is because they evolved to such ornate and intricate forms that they were completely unable to actually survive. And that they had to move out of the way so the mammals could then evolve towards us. And some of the particular versions of orthogenesis got called Aristogenesis in honor of Aristotle and his view of evolution towards some final form. That all said, I don't know the paper where Meyer argues that Aristotle anticipated the individuality thesis. That's a good thing for Meyer to read into Aristotle.
He didn't say that specifically, but it's kind of along the same lines.
Well, Aristotle's metaphysics, I think, are actually very interesting. And as I said, he had a much more embodied view of what forms are. And it's a much more complicated notion of what it means to be an individual for Aristotle than it does for Plato. So for Plato, the true individual is the form of that individual. Whereas for Aristotle, an individual is an instantiated form or kind, meaning it has to be embodied to be real. Otherwise, it's only something in name only and not real. So, in that sense, Aristotle does have a much more commitment to the concrete world than Plato does, which is why he was so influential among scientists, among other things. He believed you could learn about the world by studying at the ground level rather than retreating to abstract thought. So I'm not trying to bang on Aristotle too much here. I like Aristotle just fine. Okay, John.
So thank you. I think I finally am starting to get what it means to consider species as individuals.
Oh, good.
So there's a quiz, right, to see if you can work out on other individuals. So within a species,
yeah.
Right, what we used to call as members, individuals. Are
yeah.
individuals?
So a species has organisms as parts, and organisms have cells and organs and tissues as parts.
And those are all individuals?
Yes.
Okay, now what about a gene? Like say the gene for DNA polymerase, which biologists gaily refer to, right, by its name as if it were a person, right, which is surely an individual. So it's the same, in a certain sense, historically, the same DNA polymerase, right, in that bacterium as it is in you or me.
Yeah.
Okay, so is that an individual?
That's a really good and hard question to answer. Because the term gene ends up kind of meaning lots of things. So there can be an individual gene in a person that has parts, but there's also a category gene. And I think genes are, if you mean by gene something that's carrying information, and if you're defining it by the information it's carrying, then that's a category that sounds to me like a set or a class, which can have members. And those members are going to be individuals. But we use the same term to describe the category, the information, which is the property, and the individual thing itself. And we also use it to talk about Mendelian genes. So in a similar way that species is actually a similar kind of term. We use the term species to talk about an individual species, but we also use that term to describe the category.
No, I mean an individual gene in the sense that it has an extended material historical reality.
Oh, that I would say is an individual, yes.
Which happens to be bifurcated, right?
Yes.
So it's in all these present-day species.
Yeah. Well, that's a homology. And Mike Giesland has argued we should think of homologies as individuals. And that as long as they have a single origin, a shared origin, we should only think about things as homologous as long as they're a part of that individual historical record. So we can trace back those histories as a concrete material history. And that's a historical individual that is a homology, and its parts are genes. Now, I think that's a pretty restrictive notion of homology. So I think that's a phylogenetic notion of homology. We also have a developmental notion of homology, which might be more like a class than an individual. So again, I'm not sure if that's a satisfactory answer, but I think the phylogenetic notion of homology describes individuals. So yeah, it goes all the way down and up.